In a major development that has taken the United Kingdom by storm, official reports now confirm that police officers across England and Wales have walked out or filed formal withdrawal notices within the past hours. This unprecedented wave of resignations comes at a time when the country is grappling with rising violent incidents in several high-density urban areas, many of which authorities say are linked to broader migration-related tensions. According to internal sources within policing unions, the situation escalated rapidly after a series of high-risk incidents last week left dozens of officers injured and overwhelmed, prompting calls for emergency staffing and government intervention. The Home Office has acknowledged the resignations but insists that the numbers are still being verified. Meanwhile, public anxiety continues to grow as major cities including London, Birmingham, Manchester, and Leeds report a surge in street clashes, property damage, and late-night disorder. Eyewitnesses describe scenes of chaos, with emergency services stretched thin and security assessments being updated on an hourly basis. The Metropolitan Police Federation has released a statement calling the situation unsustainable, noting that officers feel overworked, understaffed, and increasingly unsafe. Union officials have also raised alarms about diminishing morale, especially after multiple incidents where police vans were attacked, neighborhood patrols were ambushed, and rapid response teams reported being heavily outnumbered. While ministers urge calm and emphasize that the up remains stable, opposition parties argue that the crisis exposes long-standing failures in border management, policing budgets, and community integration strategies. As this developing story unfolds, the nation is left questioning whether the current security structure can withstand the rising pressure and what immediate steps the government will announce to restore order and reinforce stability. As details continue to emerge, senior policing officials are increasingly vocal about the underlying causes of this mass walkout. Sources indicate that many frontline officers have been raising concerns for months regarding the sharp rise in violent confrontations in certain neighborhoods, areas where demographic shifts and overcrowded temporary housing centers have placed additional strain on local resources. Authorities stress that the issue is not about the presence of migrants themselves, but rather the rapid increase in population density without adequate support infrastructure, community-safe workforce, or proper integration programs. In several regions, local councils have struggled to cope with the sudden influx, leading to overcrowding, tensions between long-term residents and new arrivals, and escalating disputes that often spill into public spaces. Police officers report working double shifts, responding to escalating fights, street altercations, and organized groups engaging in clashes that stretch resources far beyond capacity. The recent spike in violent incidents has been particularly severe, with emergency dispatch logs showing a rise in calls related to disorder in just the past 2 weeks. Several police chiefs have warned the government that the situation is approaching a breaking point. Equipment shortages, lack of protective gear, and inadequate training for large-scale urban disturbances have become recurring complaints. Meanwhile, community leaders urge caution, warning that inflammatory narratives could worsen tensions or stigmatize entire groups. Experts emphasize the need for balanced reporting and a focus on the structural issues: funding, housing, integration efforts, and mental health support rather than placing blame on any community. With pressure mounting from all sides, questions are being asked in Parliament about whether the government has underestimated the scale of the crisis and what immediate measures can be implemented to protect both the public and frontline officers. In Parliament today, lawmakers held an emergency session to address the growing concerns. The Home Secretary briefed on the government's rapid response plan, outlining new security measures, temporary deployment of reserve units, and a potential expansion of border enforcement teams. The government also hinted at deploying additional funding to areas facing the highest levels of disorder. Critics, however, argue that the actions are too little, too late, pointing out that police warnings date back months. Labour and Conservative members clashed over who holds responsibility for the deteriorating safety situation. Some have pointed to overstretched social services and inadequate housing policies, noting that poor planning and slow integration have created environments where conflict becomes more likely. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister urged unity, stating that the nation must avoid letting fear or division dictate the conversation. Security analysts warn that the situation is complex. There is a combination of economic stress, housing shortages, and strained community relations contributing to the current spike in violence. The analysts report that in some boroughs, community police trust has fallen to its lowest level in years, making crime prevention even more difficult. The police walkouts have added another layer of urgency, with many officers publicly stating that they no longer feel adequately supported by leadership. Experts also note the growing role of misinformation spreading online, which can amplify tensions and distort incident reports. As the debate continues, one thing is clear: restoring stability will require a coordinated national effort, increased community engagement, and swift, decisive action from the government. On the ground, the situation remains tense. Local residents in multiple cities describe nights filled with sirens, street altercations, and visible police shortages. Videos circulating online show officers retreating from chaotic scenes, sometimes heavily outnumbered by groups involved in street clashes. Emergency workers report unprecedented stress. Ambulance crews are responding to a surge in injury-related calls, while hospital staff say emergency rooms are experiencing spikes in admissions due to fights, assaults, and crowd violence. Despite the alarming visuals, community organizations stress that the vast majority of migrants are peaceful and law-abiding, working hard to build their lives. The issue, they say, stems from overcrowding, lack of government support, and inadequate conflict prevention systems. Charities warn that deteriorating conditions in certain temporary housing centers have contributed to frustration among residents, leading to disputes that can escalate quickly. Meanwhile, police officers who walked out argued that they were left without the tools and resources needed to control such situations. Several described facing mob-like confrontations with minimal backup. Union leaders have called for immediate government intervention, including hazard pay, increased frontline staffing, and improved protective equipment. Local councils are pleading for additional funding for housing, mental health support, and community programs to relieve pressure on neighborhoods. As tensions continue, many fear that the current disorder could inspire copycat violence or spread to adjacent regions, making the government's response even more critical in the coming days. As the crisis deepens, the Home Office has announced that an independent review will be launched to investigate the causes behind both the rise in violent incidents and the mass resignation of police officers. This review will examine policing strategies, housing systems, integration policies, and emergency response structures. Analysts say this could be a turning point for national security policy in the UK. The government is also considering deploying technology-driven surveillance, quicker emergency response frameworks, and community-based de-escalation programs designed to reduce conflict. Experts stress that without transparency and public trust, no policy changes will be effective. Meanwhile, tensions within law enforcement continue to rise. Many officers who remain on duty state that morale is critically low and that repairing trust between leadership and frontline staff will require major reforms. Across the country, residents express mixed feelings: fear, frustration, and a desire for clear communication from officials. Economists warn that prolonged instability could impact businesses, tourism, and local economies if order is not restored quickly. Community leaders, however, maintain a hopeful stance, urging the public to remain calm and calling for a unified approach that avoids stereotyping any group. They emphasize the importance of supporting both vulnerable communities and the exhausted police force. As the UK watches closely, the next steps taken by Parliament and the Home Office will determine whether this crisis stabilizes or escalates further. For now, the nation remains on high alert, awaiting the government's next move as fears of wider unrest continue to grow.